I'm Rolika Roach, and welcome to the Live Council of Ministers press briefing for today, Wednesday, September 5th, 2018. At this time, I invite the Minister of Finance, the Honorable Perry Hearlings, to address you.
Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Roach. Good morning to the press corps. I was taken a little bit by surprise that I can and may open. Good morning, St. Martin. I would like to give you a little update on some of the financial issues of our country. And I would like to start with the liquidity support that was decided upon for the first quarter of 2018. And we had requested the support in June of this year, and it was approved. Just to give you a little history on that again, just to refresh the memory. The request was approved by the Kingdom Council of Ministers in the beginning of July. Early August, we received a contract from the Ministry of Interior Affairs and Kingdom Relations to sign in order to receive the monies. For the Minister of Finance to sign the liquidity support, a budget amendment is required. The original organization, the Council of Advice, CFT, and the Governor have handled this matter in a very urgent way and send it on to the Parliament actually within the time frame that normally is applied to this process. Just to make clear, the process from getting the approval for this support until we can, or the Minister of Finance can sign the agreement, you know, it can take up to 2 months before that has been concluded. And I'm very thankful to the Cabinet of the Governor, to the Council of Advice, and my Cabinet, and therewith also the Council of Ministers, to have been able to expedite this. It is now in the hands of Parliament. I understood that this week there is not a meeting week, so it was placed on the agenda for next week, Tuesday. So we have to wait one more week in order to have this debate to mandate me to sign that contract so we can receive the monies. And right now we are busy preparing for the second budgetary support for 2018. I will keep you informed on that as well. Where the amendment to receive the budget support, you need to apply a budget amendment, and this budget amendment need the pre-advice of the CFT. What we are doing right now is including in this second budget amendment for 2018. We would like to have more possibilities in our capital expenses part of the budget. Together with my fellow ministries, we are putting together the projects that we all have planned to still start in 2018. For the Ministry of Finance, that means that the necessary investment to modernize our tax office and to increase compliance and to provide better service and working conditions for the personnel will be added to the capital investment part of the running budget 2018. Other projects for the government of St. Martin are, just to name one, are the upgrading of the Raoul Illich Sport Complex. But maybe in the near future, the Minister of Sports will be able to elaborate a little bit more on that. And then a little update on the budget 2019. The budget 2019 is currently in its final stage. On several occasions, I have informed you of my decision to delay the delivering of the 2019 budget to Parliament to ensure that we get a reflection of our financial situation that is as accurate as possible. All stakeholders have been informed informally so far, and on Monday past, the day before yesterday, a letter was prepared to inform all stakeholders of the expected time schedule of budget 2019. And this also includes, of course, the House of Parliament. In summary, the Council of Ministers will handle the budget in mid-September, and then it will be sent to the Council of Advice and the CFT. The budget will contain a deficit, and therefore the Government of St. Martin will have to submit its draft budget 2019 to the Kingdom Council of Ministers, along with the CFT advice. Once the approval has been received, the draft 2019 budget will be submitted to Parliament, and we are scheduling that will be by mid-November of this year. And then on another topic, yesterday we were graced with the visit of State Secretary Knops, and I personally, and together with the Prime Minister, had a meeting with the State Secretary. I found it to be very fruitful. It gives enormous chances for future collaboration with BZK. I'm really looking forward to continue working together with the State Secretary. We have discussed some differences that we had, and but based on the differences, we also concluded that it is time that we could sit together and work out some serious things which could deliver on both sides of the pond, and solve the issues that we have together. We can create win-win situations. The only thing we need is that everybody is of goodwill. And goodwill was shown most definitely yesterday in the meeting. I also discussed with the State Secretary that the financial recovery plan that I announced when I entered the office of the Ministry of Finance, that will probably ready by the end of September, which definitely will also be shared with the community at large. We also agreed that most of the topics that we think are very urgent, that need to be discussed and need to be ironed out, that we will further discuss in meetings that are scheduled in October later this year. And that is it for now, Ms. Roach. I thank you for your attention, and I'm open for any questions that you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Heerlings, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, the Honorable Wycliffe Smith, to address you. Minister Smith.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Greetings to all gathered here this morning. Madam Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, the Department of Communications, members of the press, as well as the listening and viewing audiences via radio, television, and social media. On Monday, the St. Martin national netball team played their final match of 7 in Barbados. They did their best in representing us in the regional qualifiers for the Netball World Cup 2019. We walked away in the 7th place of the 8 teams that played. The team returns today To those ladies, we say thank you for carrying the St. Martin flag onto this regional and international stage. The new mini pitch at the Emilio Wilson Park will be formally opened tomorrow. This is another facility where youngsters and trainers can hone their skills and develop their sport and athletic abilities. Through the Department of Sport, our ministry will continue to work towards strengthening sports on St. Martin so that our people can play professionally and compete on the international level. Let us encourage our children, our youth, and all who are able to practice and train in their chosen activities. Celebrate their efforts and highlight them on social media with the hashtag #SportsMatter. The Student Support Services Division of my ministry is organizing 2 free workshops. The first one is themed Supporting Children with Special Needs, cafe-styled conversation, and this will be held this evening, September the 5th, at the University of St. Martin from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. This workshop is open to the public for anyone who has an interest in caring for and educating children with special needs. The second workshop is entitled Applying to Schools in the Netherlands. This free workshop will be held on September 6th, 2018, and it is open to recent graduates or to students who are in the last 2 years of secondary school. The workshop will be held from 5:15 p.m. to 6:45 p.m. at the office of the Student Support Services Division, which is located in the Amigo building across from the police station next to the Windward Islands Bank in Philipsburg. Hope you can find it. It's upstairs. The Applying to Schools in the Netherlands workshop is aimed at students from all sections of the diverse education system on St. Martin. Whether you come from a vocational or an academic track, or whether your instruction was in the Dutch or the English language, there will be valuable information for you. Students are encouraged to be on time and to register for the workshop since space is very limited. If parents or students have any questions on these workshops, they can contact the Student Support Services Division at telephone 543-1235 for more information. As some of you may know, we recently lost one of the students from one of our public schools. Little Clavon Bartlett was only 4 years old at his passing. One can imagine the pain that comes from losing a child at such a tender age. To the parents, grandparents, family, and loved ones, on behalf of myself and the entire Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports, I extend to you our deepest sympathies. At this point, I would like for us to pause for just a moment of silence in Clavon's memory. While we understand that there is much speculation in the media concerning the circumstances of Clavon's passing, let us be respectful of the family's time of bereavement. We must allow them this time to process their grief and give the authorities the opportunity to conduct their investigations. And this brings me to my next point, Turning Point Foundation. Just over a week ago, I met with the management of Turning Point to discuss plans to host a drug awareness program for the schools. The aim of this initiative is to prevent drug use and abuse, as we have been experiencing a rise of both on this island. Clinical Director, Dr. Judith Arndell, and the program coordinator, Mr. Fernando Richardson, they're both excited about working on a revision of their plans, which they will present to our ministry in a short time. This prevention and intervention plan will help our children to avoid these harmful substances. Yesterday, the top performers for the 2018 foundation-based exit examinations were awarded for their accomplishments. The theme of yesterday's ceremony was entitled, Excelling Against the Odds. And believe you me, the students did just that. They excelled despite the rage and the havoc caused by the worst hurricane ever to traverse the Atlantic. The overall top performer for the island was Suhani Nathumal with a 96% final grade. 5 other students were also recognized. Each child received a certificate and a gift. And we encourage all our children to strive to do their best and to excel against all odds. Education on the Move is a community-wide program aimed at encouraging all stakeholders in the community to promote education. Schools, government agencies, and the private sector are encouraged to participate in various educational activities. As this Saturday, September 8th, is International Literacy Day, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport, its Education on the Move team, in collaboration with the St. Martin National Commission for UNESCO and Friends, in commemoration of the day, will host the St. Martin Literacy Week from September 6th through 14th, 2018. This is a week-long readathon which will feature prominent figures within the St. Martin community who have been invited to participate in reading in after-school programs. Some of our parliamentarians and some of our ministers, as well as owners and managers of businesses, will be participating. The readathon is to highlight the importance of reading. The Education on the Move promotes the DEAR initiative, D-E-A-R. That means drop everything and read. The idea of DEAR is that at least once a week, all schools and businesses drop everything and be educated by reading for 20 minutes. Let me say at this time, thank you in advance to all the volunteer readers participating in schools and the participating businesses. Remember, readers are leaders. So encourage the young and the old to read something every day. With regard to the PSVE school, all I will say at this time is that a report is being prepared on the mediation meetings that were held by my chef de cabinet, Peter Gittens, and I, with the board of the Foundation for Academic and Vocational Education, FAVE, and with the principal and the staff of the Preparatory Secondary Vocational Education section of FAVE, as well as with the Windward Islands Teachers Union, the WITU. This report will be presented to the board first, and then it will be shared with all relevant stakeholders. At this point, I remind all concerned that the focus must remain on the education of our students at the PSVE section. The children's learning is our top priority. Continuing with education, this Thursday and Friday will be registration for the newly introduced government-approved law program at the University of St. Martin. All persons who are interested in studying for the legal profession can now do so right here on St. Martin. I encourage you to enroll in this program, which is being offered in collaboration with the University of Curacao. Today marks exactly 23 years that St. Martin was hit by Hurricane Lewis, a Category 4 hurricane. And tomorrow marks 1 year that we were hit by Irma, a Hurricane 5 plus hurricane, a Category 5 plus hurricane. On the first anniversary of Hurricane Irma, let us come together on a National Day of Reflection at precisely 9:06 a.m. to 9:08 a.m. tomorrow, Thursday, September 6, 2018. For these 2 minutes, we will cease from our activities at home, at school, at work, or on the roads as we reflect on these two major hurricanes, Luis and Irma, that hit St. Martin. So tomorrow at 9:06, let us pause, stop, and reflect on lessons learned. During those 2 minutes, let us honor our unsung heroes and all the citizens that work together to bring us to where we are today. To document this moment of silence, individual persons, groups, organizations, and foundations are encouraged to record their reflections on social media with the intention of creating a viral campaign, #906reflection, and a commemorative compilation video documentary, as well as a booklet. With #906reflection, we hope to create a national platform of shared stories from voices in our communities that will offer solace, support, and encouragement to others who are still recuperating 1 year later, while we give gratitude to God and acknowledge our survival. Please share your most impactful moment and provide us with words of wisdom, actions, and thoughts that kept you going from strength to where we are today, 1 year later. Together, we are certainly overcomers. Thank you for watching and listening, and do have a pleasant day.
Thank you, Minister Smith, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment, and Infrastructure, the Honorable Miklos Hitterson, to address you. Minister Hitterson will not be here for any questions, but he will only be making an opening statement.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. Good morning, Prime Minister, fellow ministers, press, and audience members viewing and listening. As we are now in the peak of the hurricane season, I would like to start today's briefing by encouraging the general public to remain vigilant and prepared should we be faced with an impending storm. During the months of July and August, the annual pre-hurricane cleanup was conducted within all districts. If there is any additional debris still on your property, it is your responsibility to make arrangements for it to be taken to the landfill. In the event of approaching weather, the ministry will carry out an additional cleanup 6 to 12 hours before the storm. But this is only for household garbage, as the ministry does not have the capacity to pick up yard debris during these times. Do not wait until the last minute to clear your property of debris. Also, all contractors should make all necessary arrangements to secure their work sites. The smallest piece of wood or unsecured tool can become a dangerous projectile. Moving on, in early August, bids were received for the ministry's maintenance of stormwater drainage channels for 2018 to 2021. The scope of which includes the cleaning and maintenance of all trenches and keeping them clear of obstructions. The final advice is now being prepared for my approval, and in the coming days, the contracts will be awarded. That information will, of course, be made public when appropriate. Also ongoing is the tender for the security services at the landfill and Vrommy Yard for 2018. On August 30th, an information session was held for potential bidders, and it was well attended. As a reminder, this bid closes on September 13th at 10 a.m. And as we are on the topic of the landfill, I would like to use this opportunity to inform that both landfills will continue to close at 6 p.m. daily for the foreseeable future. During the past weeks, the ministry has removed a large portion of sargassum seaweed from both the Oyster Pond and Point Blanche Beach. As expected, the seaweed has already started to redeposit in these areas, as we knew this will be an ongoing battle. We will continue to monitor these locations and return when necessary. The Guanabay Beach and the seaweed at that location requires special attention. Careful consideration needs to be taken in this area, as it is also a protected site due to nesting turtles. We will clear this beach in close coordination with the Nature Foundation. And for clarification, all seaweed is being buried on the beaches. It cannot be taken to the landfill because of its flammability. Now, as customary, I will end my briefing with some updates on our garbage problem. This week, I would like to remind or maybe inform those unaware that all commercial entities are responsible for the disposing of their garbage. It is against the law to dispose of this garbage in the bins that are solely for residential garbage. Businesses usually pay a third-party garbage hauler a fee to collect their business's trash. What has been happening lately, however, is that some of these dishonest persons, third-party haulers, and sometimes business owners themselves, will then turn around and dump the commercial trash into the residential bins, which often adds to the over-accumulation of trash at our bins. This is an unacceptable practice, and I call on the community to help us in being vigilant to ensure that this behavior is stopped. Report to us any instances that are witnessed, and if you can, please take a picture. We warn businesses and haulers that if caught, hefty fines will be issued. In addition, in keeping with my promise to hold garbage haulers accountable to the terms of their contracts, I have ordered the immediate termination of the contract of Roberto and Sons, responsible for the Cul-de-sac Basin, Cahill, Fort Willem, Bel Air, and surrounding areas due to poor work. This comes after a number of warnings had been issued to the company. The contracts will be reissued to the second highest bidders, and they will now be responsible for garbage pickup in those areas. For clarification, Parcel 5 should now be awarded to Leonard Enterprises and Parcel 6 to Meadowlands. We all have a part to play, and it is only right that I stand here weekly and ask residents to take responsibility, and as I ask the business owners to take responsibility, I also hold the garbage haulers to their responsibility as well. I and the ministry will continue to keep this issue at the forefront. This concludes my press briefing for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Heaterson, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Minister of Public Health, Social Development, and Labor, the Honorable Emma Lee, to address you. Minister Lee?
Good morning, colleague ministers, members of the media, those listening by television, radio, or internet. Thank you for tuning in. As Minister Smith touched on, I think it is good to sort of reflect on 1 year later after both Lewis and Irma. I think we certainly all can recognize that we still have challenging times ahead. We certainly recognize that the economy is still yet to really recover. Much of our hotel inventory is still not even started construction or reconstruction. So I have the same concerns about our economy as all the other members of our community. And the related unemployment, we recognize that many individuals have been forced to change careers. You know, they've had to move from hospitality sector jobs to reconstruction jobs. And certainly I think anyone who takes a drive around the island can see that there's still certainly many homes and businesses that need to repair, much less strengthen for the upcoming, for our current hurricane season. However, I would say that, and I think, the minister touched on it briefly, I applaud you reaching out to Turning Point, and it really does show that our ministries cross over and overlap in our responsibilities, and I think that through the collaborative efforts through the Ministry of VSA and all of the other ministers, actually every ministry has a role in terms of the projects that individual ministries move forward, as well, of course, as local stakeholders and international stakeholders. But, the ministry, and I think as you take the moment to reflect and look at, what have we done in the past year, I think that a lot has been done, and that with the collaborative effort of all of the stakeholders, that we've been able to roll out a number of programs that have been aimed at helping the most vulnerable in our community. As our Minister of Finance will testify that, we don't have enough resources to do all the things we would like to do, and so we have to make choices, and obviously our focus is to make sure that the most vulnerable in our community have the assistance that they need. And if you look back, the basic food voucher, or the basic necessities voucher, which is known as the food voucher program, we rolled it out as soon as we could after Hurricane Irma. That program has since come to a completion, and we're in the process of creating a report in terms of how the money was spent and what kind of results we had out of the program. Our reintegration shelter, as a matter of fact, I noticed last week, I think it was the St. Martin Development Fund handing over the keys to a house, but actually as you read the article, I was very happy with many of the things it said, in that this was a family that started out in the Festival Village and then moved into our reintegration shelter, a project that the Ministry of VSA has put a lot of effort into. And there, with the support of the Dr. J Foundation and the social workers, helped to connect him to resources and to the St. Martin Development Fund program in order to get his house rebuilt and eventually move out. And that is exactly the idea behind our reintegration shelter, is that we bring people in who are in need. We give them a decent place to live, a quality of life, but we also help them to move on with their lives and reintegrate into the community. So far, again, very happy with the results of that. We do still have space, of course. Financial aid, medical aid, legal aid, these are all programs that, of course, have seen some increase in utilization, meaning that there are people who are now in more financial difficult times and they've requested financial assistance. After Hurricane Irma, we came with a shorter program. In other words, we would give 6 months assistance, but we would give those decisions earlier and with less scrutiny, let's say, or less bureaucracy, in order to make sure that we could really help those who were in need. And of course, legal aid, unfortunately, after the passing of the storm, a lot of businesses had labor issues, and people have to make sure that their rights are being defended. And of course, the Ministry of VSA supports that by approving legal aid so that employees who question whether their rights have been violated, that they have access to legal services to defend those rights. As well as our debris management program. This is a program that's funded by the trust fund. And in there, we've integrated a component that people who are out of work, so for labor-intensive programs, in particular our debris cleanup programs, we are tapping into the unemployed on the island so that they have an opportunity to earn some extra money, a stipend, as well as their health insurance, and that's something I'll come back to in a moment. And that rolls into our emergency income support and training program. This is something that actually started in roughly December of 17 as the hospitality training program, and has since morphed into, not as sexy a name, but the emergency income support and training program, right? So this is a program where we take people who were underemployed, whose hours were drastically reduced, or unemployed, and started with a hospitality training program. And as I said, that was a pilot program that was funded out of our budget for a tune of 8 million guilders, I believe, Minister, and then has allowed us to start the program in a pilot phase, see what went right, what went wrong, and with that, we rolled it into the World Bank program that we now are in the process of executing. We have about 850 participants now, and that number is still rising. So we have a good enrollment in the program, and this is being managed by the St. Martin Training Foundation. But as we rolled out the program, we found that there was a number of challenges. Basically, for technical reasons, people who were going into the program, there was a question mark as to the stipend that was received. Could it be considered income, or is it considered a stipend? And I realize it created an issue legally in terms of whether some of the participants were entitled to, by our current laws, to health insurance. Some of them now were working less than 5 days a week. And there was even a question about training versus employment. So there were a number of technical issues that really created barriers to some of the participants being able to maintain their health insurance. And I received many calls from people saying, how basically inhumane they felt it was that all of a sudden people who were in need of their health insurance and health care were all of a sudden having troubles accessing that. And I did, of course, point out that as we look at our universal health insurance and the legislation that we're looking at providing health care for everyone, actually, if that health insurance legislation was passed, none of these issues would be issues. But nonetheless, those are policies and legislation that the ministry's in process of working on. But we took this challenge, and we, through the work of various ministries, the cooperation, and of course, mainly with the Ministry of VSA, we negotiated with World Bank to ensure that the health insurance of the participants of the program was insured. So actually the fee for, or the premium for these employees is being paid as part of the program. And actually the benefits of this are multiple. Besides the fact that now the employees all should be able to have their health insurance cards, and that's something we're working on as we speak. But it also means that SZV receives funding premiums, and these people would have, if unable to obtain health insurance, probably been able to qualify under our medical aid program, in which case government then would have had to pay the medical premiums or costs associated with the program. And as we know, government finances are a challenge already. So it helps us to reduce the financial burdens on the Ministry of Finance, on government coffers. It helps to ensure the financial stability of SZV, and it ensures that the individuals have access to health insurance. And again, that is our primary concern, ensuring that everyone has access to quality health care close to home. The second topic I'd like to touch on just briefly is about compliance. This is something that I've spoken about for all of my terms, that we are very serious about compliance, and it's in the newspaper today, but SZV is hosting a employer's obligation compliance training. So this is September 11th, 12th, and 13th. It is at the SZV building, that's building number 3 on the first level, between 6:30 and 8 p.m. And this is for employers. So this is a 3-day workshop explaining to employers how do they fill out their mutation forms, how do they fill out all of their paperwork, and make sure that they are compliant with the rules for SZV. I want to mention that I do hear many complaints. I get phone calls all the time from businesses and from individuals who are saying they have problems either with their referral process or problems getting their SZV card. They have to go, come back, bring more documents, go, come back, and the time that it takes. And I want the public to understand I hear all of this. And we are certainly looking at structurally how do we improve this. And as I bring up these topics and discuss them with SZV, and I explain that we are frustrating businesses, our citizens are getting frustrated with the cumbersome and bureaucratic process. And one of the things that turns out is that we have quite a compliance issue. We have people submitting falsified, fraudulent documents. We have people who are claiming that individuals are registered to work when they're not really registered, or companies who are registering and they only pay premiums for a small portion of the people that are actually working there. So I understand that they have a challenge, that in these days that they are faced with a lot of non-compliant, inappropriate, illegal behavior. But I've asked them, and I said, look, I understand that, and I feel your pain, I feel your challenges, but we need to find a way to balance compliance against the current realities and against the hardships that people are looking at in our communities. And so that's something that we are working on. We are looking at reforming our referral process, but also how do we facilitate, let's not treat all businesses the same. Let's be honest. We need to treat our business, SZV, as a business. This is an approach the Minister of Finance has talked about with his department as well, and I think that's something that we should look at for SZV. If you have businesses who've been operating and paying their premiums and working well for a long time, why do we treat them the same as a company who just registered yesterday, or you find that you go to their business and they have all kinds of non-compliant employees? Why do we treat them all the same? Let's find a different level of how we manage that process. And I think also it's important, and I've mentioned this to SZV as well, let's be careful. If the employer has been non-compliant in some ways, don't punish the employee who has been compliant. So in other words, if the premiums are being taken by employees but not being turned over, you have a compliance issue with the employer. Why are we punishing the employee? Use the employees to help provide you that information and say, look, here's my pay slips, I'm getting this deducted. Use that to match against your records at SZV. So again, it is cumbersome. It is something that we are working on. And I think as we further digitalize or move towards an e-government, e-health type of structure, those types of things will become easier to identify. But I would like to commend SZV. I know their team is working very hard on improving compliance and also customer service. It is a focus. It is one of the points that we discuss on a regular basis. I think the registration workshop is an excellent example of how SZV is trying to inform the public, make sure that they are aware of what the rules and regulations are. I certainly would advocate both carrot and stick kind of approach. So let's educate, let's assist, let's facilitate, and when necessary, let's make sure that people are compliant. And I think a message to the employees as well. It's important that employees understand your rights, make sure that your employers are registering you at SZV, make sure you get your appointments to get your insurance card from SZV. And if you're not sure about what to do, you can reach out to the ministry. SZV has an excellent website, actually, with lots of information there. So make use of that. So contact SZV, contact the ministry. We're happy to be a resource for both employers and employees in terms of getting it right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Lee, for your opening remarks. At this time, I invite the Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs, the Honorable Leona Romeo Marlin, to address you. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Ms. Roach. A pleasant good morning to one and all. My colleague ministers, members of the press, good morning, St. Martin. On Monday, the Minister of Finance and I had the pleasure to announce that St. Martin has joined the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility, otherwise known as CRIF. As of September 1st this year, the government of St. Martin is insured through CRIF for damages resulting from earthquakes, tropical cyclones, and excess rainfall. St. Martin's participation in CRIF was considered by previous governments but never materialized. Now, with the financial support of the World Bank Trust Fund, St. Martin is finally able to make this important step to strengthen our disaster preparedness. Through CRIF, the government of St. Martin protects itself from short-term liquidity problems after a major natural disaster, as happened in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma. As Prime Minister, I am very pleased that St. Martin is able to follow the example of our neighboring countries, including Anguilla and St. Kitts, in joining this unique insurance facility. CRIF is the first multi-country risk pool in the world. This insurance instrument helps small countries with short-term cash flow problems after a catastrophic event like a hurricane or earthquake. CRIF pays out within 2 weeks after such a disaster. This quick payouts that can help the government of St. Martin in financing our initial disaster response and assist in maintaining basic government functions after a catastrophic event. With the highest possible coverage, St. Martin's premium for tropical cyclones is $500,000. For extensive rainfall, it is $275,000, and for earthquakes, the premiums amounts to $15,000 US. The maximum payouts from CRIF are approximately $9.8 million for tropical cyclones, $4.5 million for excess rainfall, and $770,000 for earthquakes. And to be clear, these are not absolute, but maximum payouts. The actual payouts will be determined based on the nature and impact of the event on a case-by-case basis. As the government is making these investments to strengthen our disaster preparedness, it is encouraging to know that CRIF has helped out many neighboring islands over the past years, especially in the aftermath of Hurricane Irma. Since the inception of CRIF in 2007, the facility has made payouts to 13 member governments totaling $130.5 million US. During the last year's hurricane season, CRIF paid out $62 million US to member states in this region, including $6.7 million to Anguilla, $20.3 million to Dominica, and $6.8 million to Antigua and Barbuda. The participation of St. Martin in CRIF is the result of the cooperation of this government with the World Bank and the Netherlands. This is a milestone in our recovery process. As I have said before, throughout this process, proper planning and preparations remain paramount to ensure that the limited available funding is spent in a sustainable and effective manner. While sometimes frustrating, rebuilding sustainable requires taking the necessary time to ensure that our recovery is of such quality that it benefits the people of St. Martin for years to come. On another note, today I will be leaving to New York to attend the UN Security Council meeting on behalf of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to address the peacekeeping mission to Haiti. The United Nations Security Council is one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations. The UNSC is charged with the maintenance of international peace and security and is the only UN body with the authority to issue binding resolutions to member states. The Kingdom of the Netherlands has secured a non-permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, or UNSC. The Kingdom of the Netherlands and Italy both share the seat, and the Netherlands is busy wrapping up its position as a non-permanent member. One of the agreements made was that the prime ministers of each of the Caribbean countries will be given an opportunity to address the UNSC. The prime ministers of Aruba and Curacao have both addressed the council, and it's now St. Martin's turn. As Prime Minister of St. Martin, I will underscore and draw parallels of best practices thus far in our reconstruction, considering that it has been 1 year since the passing of Hurricane Irma. This concludes my announcements for today. I await any questions that the press may have. I thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your opening remarks. The Minister of Justice is present, however, will not be making any opening statements this morning. We now move on to the question and answer session. We will only have 2 rounds of questions as we are limited with time. Stephen Cerulean of PJD2 Radio, you have the floor.
Ministers, Prime Minister, good morning. My question is for the Minister of Finance. You said that you had fruitful discussions with the State Secretary yesterday. You also stated that you were able to set aside your differences. What you failed to at least mention was what were those differences between you and the State Secretary.
Thank you, Stephen, for your question. Well, the differences were more in line of vision that I had as, or still have, as the Minister of Finance, pertaining to the budget, the upcoming budget 2019. And I remember that on June 25th, and the first press briefing that I had after being sworn in as Minister of Finance, that I made known to the public in general that I would like to take some extra time to prepare for the 2019 budget. The reason being, when I came into office, I came to meet a lot of skeletons that were never handled before. And when you look at it, you cannot, at least not in my book, continue the way we have been doing our budgets, knowing in the back of your mind that we have a lot of skeletons all over the place. So every time when we produce a budget and knowing that those are still there, to me, it is not right. So I wanted to set it right. I want to come to a honest as possible budget 2019. And that takes some additional time. I requested that respectfully from everybody, the public in general, Parliament for that matter, and I also put that request forward to the State Secretary. And the State Secretary then, took the position, yeah, but September 1st, there's where you should submit your budget to Parliament, which is in our Constitution, yes, it is. But these are extraordinary circumstances, and I was just asking for understanding where that is concerned. That was all, and there we had a difference of opinion. The State Secretary, in a very pleasant meeting yesterday, mentioned that, it is understandable, but still, we need to adhere to those set dates as much as possible. We have no problems where that is concerned at the moment, so everything, we are working hard on it, let me put it this way, and I try to meet the deadlines as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Lyndon Brown of BCN TV, you have the floor.
Good morning to the people of St. Martin and to our wonderful ministers. The word today is advancement. Minister Martin, St. Martin have signed signed up with the Caribbean Risks Insurance. Is this to say that when there is disaster, that St. Martin would not have to depend on the Dutch for aid anymore?
Thank you for that question. By no means this means that St. Martin will not have to depend on the kingdom in general, kingdom partners for assistance, depending on the category. But what CRIF does, actually, it's a tool for us to be able to have access to monies within a short period of time, within 2 weeks, so that we don't have to be dependent or deplete our national budget.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Alita Singh of the Daily Herald, you have the floor.
Good morning, Rolika. Good morning to Prime Minister. Good morning to ministers of the Council. Prime Minister, my question relates to the World Bank and the negotiations that have been ongoing. Has the World Bank indicated in any of its requests or suggestions to government to do any kind of layoffs in its government-owned companies or within the government apparatus itself?
Thank you, Alita, for that question, and I know exactly where you're going with that, as it was made publicly that the World Bank indicated that, or through my person signing something with the World Bank, that about 70 persons at GB will lose their jobs. I can firmly state that we have the report of the World Bank, and there is nothing related to layoffs. So that statement that was made was absolutely not true. And I have shared the report with the Council of Ministers, and I plan also to share the report with the members of Parliament so that when they're giving information, that they give accurate information to the general public. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister. We now move on to the final round of questions. Stephen Sterling, you have the floor.
Minister of Finance again, in the absence of the Minister of TIAT. KLM recently announced additional flights to St. Martin during the winter season. I'm sure you have taken note of that. What does that mean in that St. Martin is able to get a booster in the economy? And where do you stand in terms of accommodation at this time to welcome our visitors?
Thank you, Stephen. And you direct your question to me as the substitute Minister of TIAT. I took notice of the additional flights from KLM to St. Martin, which is most welcome. I'm sure that the extra airlift that will take place later on in the season will be of sorts that who are coming to the island have places to stay, either hotels, Airbnb, and you name it. My main concern with the additional airlift is the pricing of the flight still from KLM coming to St. Martin. Again, that is not direct my portfolio, and I'm sure that the Minister of TIAT will take a good look at it, because we need that additional airlift, that's clear. How are we going to progress with it? That depends on how are we progressing with our hotel facilities and our airport facilities. But it's very encouraging that a company like KLM saw it fit to add additional airlift in the season. So we are very happy and very thankful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Lyndon Brown.
Good morning again, Minister Smith. Yeah, you mentioned that there's going to be some formal collaboration with Turning Point with your office. Over the years and weeks and months, we have seen persons that we know were very good people, and they're on the street. For some reason, they have consumed some substance, and they are not right in their head. And a lot of time, you will hear from the authorities, oh, you cannot pick up these people against their will. With this cooperation, help these people. We see a lot of people on the street that are roaming in deplorable condition. It's pain sometimes. So would you look into this also?
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for the question. The Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports has begun to dialogue with Turning Point concerning a program that will be placed in the schools, and awareness programs about substance abuse and use. Concerning persons who cannot be picked up, that's a matter, I think, for my colleague, the Minister of Justice, and maybe he can answer that from a legal and technical standpoint.
Thank you. Just to add to my colleague minister, when it comes to treatment at Turning Point, it can be court mandated or it can be voluntary. So those are the two options. Of course, our ministry is always willing to work with all ministries as well as the Mental Health Foundation, because sometimes we have an overlap of mental health issues or challenges that is complicated by drug use or alcohol. So those are ways that we can continue working together. Thanks.
Thank you, Minister De Wever. Alita Singh, you have the final question.
Thank you again, Wolaica. Prime Minister, again on dealing with finances, and also I think the Minister of Finance could chime in here as well. The signing of the Caribbean Risk Management Facility. Of course, this is not something that will end when the World Bank monies come to an end, the Dutch government funding comes to an end. And this, of course, is not the only new financial commitment that government is making. How, considering we're into our second budget, second deficit budget, how is it envisioned in our multi-annual plan that we will be able to take up all of the responsibilities for new commitments that we're taking in this dire financial time without any formal feeling that we'll be able to recover threefolds come 5, come 10 years from now?
Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Alita. Very just question. We need to realize a couple of things. First of all, we are still in a disaster zone. I'm very happy that we were able to conclude this agreement with the CRIF, showing that besides the recovery of country St. Martin, you still need to continue govern your country, the day-to-day business, and this is what is is required. So this is one of the aspects of the day-to-day business of government. And yes, the premium this time is funded through the trust fund, so it's not costing us anything at this time. But yes, I need to take that into consideration for future budgets. That also shows the difficulties that we have with compiling the 2019 budget, because really on a daily basis, I'm being confronted with issues like this that we need to incorporate in this. And then people can, you know, say whatever they want about the delaying and, you know, whatever it is. If you want to produce a budget that we can work with for years to come, a realistic budget, we have to take all these things into consideration. And yes, this CRIF will also be adopted in the 2019 budget. But for that matter, I can also announce that the 2019 budget to be presented will undergo some budgetary amendments going along the way next year. So yes, by all means, Alita, that's a responsibility that we bear as a government to take care of country and people through these type of insurances. But there are all kind of other expenses that we still need to undertake to run the country.
And if I may add to the minister, and again, thank you for that important question. You know, as a government, we have to prioritize. We have to look at the things that are direly needed for the country to protect the citizens of our country and take further action. So as the minister states that this new commitment, as you call it, will is going to help the country, but definitely in the planning moving forward, we also have to budget for something like this. And again, we will always reassess or assess the things that we are committed to and see if they are needed or if they are not needed. So an evaluation will come from the Council of Ministers to make sure that we are getting exactly what we need for this country. But again, it is about protecting the country and prioritizing and making sure that the things that are in place, we make those decisions now and not later.